It's going down. Shalom. First and foremost, giving all praises, honor, glory, respect, and blessings to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Salutations to the Lord's elect on the four corners of the earth, pushing this truth and sincerity while patiently waiting for Yahweh Shai's return. And double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone, which have taught us everything we know through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai. And welcome to another series of It's Going Down, being brought to you by the spirit and power of Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai. U.S. economy faces major recession. Economist. The prediction comes despite contradictory, if I'm saying that correctly, estimates from the Federal Reserve. Okay, and I read in an article, I believe 2 months ago, how they were talking about how the economy of the United States was going from a stagflation into a depression. Now, for those who don't know what a stagflation is when there is a slowdown in the GDP of an economic system. And what is a GDP? Gross domestic production. And a country's gross domestic production depends on how much the economy produces and how much the economy is able to profit from the merchandise that it produces. So, because the United States of America's GDP began to slow down, the economy started to enter into a state what is called stagflation. Now, people often mistake a recession from a stagflation. A recession is a slowdown in economic activity, which can lead to a stagflation or a stagflation recession. A recession comes from high unemployment rates. It comes from, businesses closing down, major corporations closing down. It comes from the government not making enough money from its corporations or businesses out there. That's where you get a recession from. Okay. So, inevitably, a recession can lead into a depression, which a depression is when a country's GDP level, a percentage level, is very, very low. That means that the unemployment rate is extremely high. That means that the country is falling financially, and that's where we are heading ultimately. The United States is constantly printing and printing and printing and printing and printing more and more money, and now they're talking about raising taxes for the rich, the wealthy, as well as the poor, as well as printing out more money. And the more money the United States government prints, the more value the dollar loses. And the more value the dollar loses, the less of an effect it will have when it comes to making purchases of merchandise from these other countries. So now you start to see, or now you start to have a good idea of where this country is heading. So right now, the U.S. economy is in what is called a stagflation. Now, if you don't know what a stagflation is, and you're a sincere brother in this truth, following after the spirit of Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, then rewind the video and hear me out again, because I don't like to repeat myself. So if we scroll down here, it says the United States economy is about to tumble into a recession. Right. Now remember, a stagflation can lead into a recession. It says economic experts have forecast dismissing more upbeat predictions from the Federal Reserve. Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers warned on Sunday that the Fed's inflation-related forecasts have been too much optimistic and insisted that it confronted the recession staring in the face. When inflation is as high as it is right now, the unemployment is now low as it is right now, and that's bullshit. Okay, when inflation is high as it is right now and unemployment is as low, no, unemployment is high here in the United States. Let me remind you that when the United States government handed out all those stimulus checks, what happened? The unemployment rate went up. Why? Because this is how the stimulus checks work. Okay, they give you stimulus checks based on how many children you have living in your home. So let's just to say if you are a parent, right, and you have 6 children living in your household, that means you get $2,000 worth of stimulus checks per each child in your house. So there's a lot of people who have received over $10,000 in stimulus checks. You think they're really going to want to go back to work? And this is not the first time they've received stimulus checks. Let me remind you that. Excuse me. People have received at least 3 different stimulus checks. So we're talking about people out there who are sitting on over $30,000 worth of stimulus checks, just from how many family members they have living in their household. Now, if you have 6 children living in your house, right? Excuse me. Including yourself, that's at least $14,000 right there worth of stimulus checks. Now, throughout the years of this pandemic, right, people have received over the course of the years 3 different stimulus checks. So you tell me how much that is when you add it all up. They already had a car. Their mortgage and shit was already paid off. So what would be the point of going back to work? All you would have to do at that point is move into a decent house. It might be like $900. It might be $1,000 per month on the rent, bills and so forth. You think they're really gonna want to go back to work? All they got to do is pay the bills and the rent, and they're fine. So you see, there's a lot of people out there who ended up not working anymore simply because of these stimulus checks. So the unemployment rate is pretty high here in the United States. Okay, and not to mention the standard for getting employed at some of these jobs is pretty high. You got to have certain degrees in certain areas. You got to have a diploma in certain areas. You got to have certain skills in certain areas. And even if they provide you with training, there's no guarantee you got the job. You need a license in certain areas. So the unemployment rate here in the United States is pretty high. Okay? And then on top of that, you got to have ID. You got to have a social security card. Not everybody have that. It says when inflation is as high as it is right now and unemployment is as low as it is right now, it's almost always been followed within 2 years by recession. And this country has been in a recession for more than 2 years. Summers declared during a Sunday appearance on CNN, countering current Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's claims that nothing suggests a recession is in the works. But it is. It's been in the works. That's why homelessness is at an all-time high. Summers pointed to what's happening in the stocks and bonds markets and the recent rock bottom consumer sentiment numbers as proof that there's certainly a risk of recession in the next year, and that it's more likely than not we'll have a recession within the next 2 years. No, we're in a recession right now. Things could get even worse depending on the price oil, he added, highlighting the risks that will soon be higher. So I'm going to leave off with this scripture right here. Isaiah 47:1. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Modern day Babylon today is America. Sit on the ground, there is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no longer be called tender and delicate. So this country is no longer being called tender and delicate. When was this country called tender and delicate? Around the mid 1800s, going into the early 1900s. Okay, when everything was cheap and the economy was flourishing and this country was doing excellent financially, that's when this country was called tender and delicate. But now look, this country is in a recession. Well, it's in a stagflation, heading into a recession. Even though this country been in a recession, but there is without a doubt that this country is not only in a recession, but is in a stagflation. Now, I've also mentioned earlier about stagflation recession, so keep that in mind. With that, I'm going to say shalom is on to the next one.